I never expected to discover my husband's betrayal during what should have been a normal Sunday brunch. But there I was, frozen in my own hallway, listening to him plot with his parents about how to get his hands on my family's money. My name is Sloan, and until that moment, I thought I had a pretty good handle on my life. I'm a music teacher, married to Reed, who I thought was the love of my life, and mother to our amazing 3-year-old daughter, Lila. My parents built a comfortable life for themselves through hard work, and I've always been proud to follow their example of independence. She just needs the right push, Reed was saying in our living room, his voice carrying that smooth, confident tone he usually reserved for his sales pitches. If we can convince her to quit teaching, she'll have to rely more on her parents' support. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart pounding. Lila was upstairs taking her nap, and I'd just come back from checking on her when I heard them talking. "Darling, you're being too subtle," my mother-in-law Camille's voice dripped with honey-coated venom. "That salon chain her mother runs is worth millions. Sloan needs to understand that her little music teaching career is, well, beneath her potential." Beneath her potential? I mouthed silently, my hands clenching into fists. "It's not that simple," Reed sighed. "Sloan's stubborn about her independence. She gets that from her father." "Well, her father's not getting any younger," Grant, my father-in-law, chimed in. "And neither is her mother. Have you looked into their estate planning?" I felt sick. The conversation continued, but their voices became muffled by the blood rushing in my ears. 3 years of marriage, and I'd never heard Reed talk about me like this. Like I was some puzzle to be solved, a resource to be mined. The worst part? They were discussing my parents' money as if they were already dead. My mom, who still works 60-hour weeks at her salons because she loves what she does. My dad, who still tinkers with new tech innovations in his home office, more alive than ever in his retirement. I must have made some sound because the conversation in the living room suddenly stopped. Taking a deep breath, I straightened my shoulders and walked in, plastering on my best teacher smile, the one I use when catching students passing notes in class. "Hey everyone," I said, proud of how steady my voice sounded. "Having a nice chat?" Reed's face flickered with something. Guilt? Concern? Before settling into his usual charming smile. "Hey, babe. We were just talking about your career." "Oh." I picked up my coffee mug from the side table, needing something to do with my hands. "Anything interesting?" Camille jumped in, all perfectly manicured nails and practice concern. "Darling, we were just discussing how you could have so many more opportunities if you weren't tied down to teaching. With your family's resources." "My family's resources," I interrupted, taking a slow sip of my now cold coffee, "are exactly that. My family's." The room went quiet. Reed shifted in his seat, that familiar crease appearing between his eyebrows, the one that shows up when a sale isn't going his way. "Sloan," he started, but I cut him off with a look. "I think I need some air," I said, setting down my mug with a careful precision that belied the trembling in my hands. "Would you all mind watching Lila for a bit? I just need to clear my head." As I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. I looked exactly the same as I had this morning, but everything felt different. The woman staring back at me had just discovered that her marriage might be built on a foundation of lies. And she was already planning what to do about it. The week after I overheard Reed's conversation with his parents, I found myself sitting at my parents' dining table, watching my mother arrange flowers like nothing was wrong with the world. I hadn't told them about what I discovered yet. How do you tell your parents that their son-in-law sees them as a walking investment portfolio? "You're quieter than usual," Mom said, trimming a stem with practiced precision. "Is everything okay with Lila?" "Lila's perfect," I replied, managing a small smile. "She's with Reed at his parents' house." Mom's hands stilled for a moment. "Ah, Camille and Grant's." The way she said their names told me everything I needed to know about her opinion of my in-laws. I should have paid more attention to her instincts 3 years ago. "They're hosting a dinner tonight," I continued, tracing the wood grain of the table with my finger, "to discuss a new business venture." Dad looked up from his tablet, his engineer's mind already clicking into gear. "What kind of venture?" "I don't know yet, but they specifically requested that you and Mom come too." "Did they now?" Mom's voice had that edge to it, the same one she used when dealing with difficult suppliers for her salon chain. How interesting. The doorbell rang before I could respond. My stomach dropped when I saw Reed through the window, arriving early with his parents in tow. Lila wasn't with them. "Where's Lila?" I asked as soon as they entered. "The nanny's watching her," Reed answered smoothly, kissing my cheek. "We thought it would be better to discuss business, without distractions." I caught the look that passed between my parents. They'd always supported my decision to keep teaching after Lila was born, unlike Camille, who called it playing at having a career. Dinner was a masterclass in passive-aggressive warfare. Camille praised Mom's cooking while simultaneously suggesting she must be too busy with her little salons to cook often. Grant kept steering the conversation toward retirement planning, while Reed maintained his salesman's smile, watching everyone like he was waiting for the perfect moment to close a deal. "So," Reed finally said, setting down his wine glass, "we wanted to discuss an exciting opportunity." "Here it comes," I thought. "There's this amazing property development project," he continued. "Premium location, guaranteed returns. But we need initial investors." My father's expression didn't change, but I saw his hand tighten around his fork. "And you're bringing this to us because?" "Because family should help family," Camille jumped in. "And with your resources, it would be such a shame not to." "Our resources," my mother interrupted, "are already allocated to expanding the salon chain. We're opening 3 new locations next month." I watched Reed's face fall slightly before he recovered. "But surely some diversification would be wise?" "Marlo, your business is successful, but property development could provide much better returns." "Better returns than the business I built from nothing?" Mom's voice could have frozen hell. "The business that put Sloan through college debt-free?" "That's not what Reed meant," Camille said quickly. "We just think." "I know exactly what you think," I cut in, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. "You think my parents' money is your safety net. You think my mother's business is just a stepping stone to something better. You think I should quit my job and let my husband handle the finances." The room went dead silent. Reed stared at me, his charm cracking to reveal something darker underneath. "Have you been eavesdropping on private conversations?" "Private conversations about my family's money?" I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "Yes, I heard everything last Sunday. And I've been watching you ever since, waiting to see if you'd come clean. Instead, you brought your parents here to help you pitch this scheme." "Sloan," Reed started, but my father cut him off. "I think it's time for you all to leave," Dad said quietly. His calm tone carried more weight than any shout. As they left, Reed lingered in the doorway. "We'll talk about this at home." "No," I replied. "We won't, because I'm staying here tonight, with my daughter. You can't just watch me." After they left, I sat between my parents on the couch, feeling like a kid again. Except this time, the monster wasn't under my bed. It was wearing my wedding ring. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. Mom squeezed my hand. "Don't be sorry. Be smart." And in that moment, I knew exactly what I needed to do next. I never meant to become a detective in my own marriage, but there I was at midnight, scrolling through Reed's laptop while he slept upstairs. The house was silent except for the hum of the heating system and my racing heart. What started as a gut feeling led me to his email. The password was still Lila's birthday, something that should have been sweet but now felt like another manipulation. My hands trembled as I clicked through folder after folder, each one revealing another piece of the puzzle I wished I'd never started solving. "Oh God," I whispered, staring at a bank statement. The numbers didn't lie. Reed had been hemorrhaging money for months. Failed investments, hidden credit cards, loans I never knew about. But what made my stomach turn was an email thread with his parents about accessing Marlo's business accounts. The floor creaked behind me. "Find what you're looking for?" I spun around to find Reed standing in the doorway, his face half hidden in shadow. He didn't look angry. Worse, he looked calculating. "How long have you been planning to steal from my mother's business?" My voice was steady, despite the tremor in my hands. Steal is such an ugly word. He stepped into the room, running a hand through his sleet-messed hair. I prefer to think of it as redistributing family resources. Family resources? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You mean the business my mother built from nothing? The one she worked 18-hour days for? The one that could save us? He slammed his hand on the desk, making me jump. Do you know what it's like, living in the shadow of your family's success? Having everyone compare me to your father? So, this is about your ego? This is about survival. He leaned closer, his charm completely gone now. I'm drowning here, Sloan. The property development deal fell through. I owe people money. How much? More than you want to know. I stood up slowly, putting distance between us. And you thought the solution was to steal from my mother? I thought the solution was to use available resources to stop. I held up my hand. Just stop with the sales pitch. For once in your life, be honest. Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the facade. Fine. You want honest? I'm broke. Everything I built is gone. And your parents? They're sitting on a fortune while watching me fail. They worked for that fortune. And I worked too. His voice rose, making me glance nervously at the ceiling, thinking of Lila. But nothing I do is ever enough. Not for them. Not for my parents, not for you. Don't you dare make this about me, I hissed. I loved you. I supported you. I never once asked about money. Exactly. He laughed bitterly. You never had to ask about money. You've always had it as a safety net. Must be nice. I opened my email and started forwarding myself copies of everything I'd found. Reed watched me, his jaw tightening. What are you doing? Protecting my family. I met his eyes. You have 12 hours to tell my parents everything or I will. And believe me, you'd rather it come from you. You're bluffing. Try me. I grabbed my phone and headed for the stairs. I'm getting Lila. He caught my arm. It's the middle of the night. Let go of me. My voice was ice. Or the first call I make won't be to my parents. It'll be to the police. His hand dropped. As I packed a bag for Lila, I could hear him pacing downstairs, making phone calls in hushed, angry tones. I knew he was calling his parents, probably trying to damage control. Let them try. 20 minutes later, I was buckling a sleepy Lila into her car seat. Reed stood in the doorway, watching us. This isn't over, he said. You're right, I replied, starting the car. It's just beginning. As I drove through the dark streets toward my parents' house, Lila dozed in the back seat. I caught glimpses of her in the rearview mirror, so innocent, so unaware of how her world was about to change. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my resolve strengthening. Reed was right about one thing. This wasn't over. But he had no idea what was coming next. They say bad news comes in threes. I just never expected all three to hit within 24 hours. The first came at dawn, when my lawyer called to tell me Reed had already withdrawn half our savings. Legal, since both our names were on the account, but devastating nonetheless. I sat in my parents' guest room, watching Lila sleep while my hands shook around my phone. The second blow landed at noon. Mom collapsed at one of her salons. Stroke, the doctor said in the sterile hospital hallway. She's stable, but the next 48 hours are critical. I stood there, numb, as Dad gripped my hand. The fluorescent lights made everything look harsh and unreal, like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. The third hit just before midnight. A text from an unknown number. Thought you should see this. Attached was a photo of Reed leaving a hotel with Camille, carrying documents. The timestamp showed it was taken just hours after I'd left with Lila. I was still staring at my phone when Dad came back from the coffee machine. The vultures are already circling, he said quietly, handing me a cup. Reed's been calling the salon managers, trying to get financial information. How did you? Maria called. She's worked with your mother for 15 years. She knows something's wrong. He sat heavily in the plastic chair beside me. They all do. A nurse walked past, her shoes squeaking on the linoleum. Through the window of Mom's room, I could see her lying there, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. The woman who taught me to stand on my own 2 feet couldn't even breathe without machines. Dad, I started, but my voice cracked. I know. He pulled out his tablet, pulling up documents I recognized from Mom's office. Your mother and we've been expecting something like this. Not this exactly, but what do you mean? We've seen the way Reed and his parents look at what we've built, like it's their backup plan. His fingers moved across the screen, entering passwords. Your mother made some changes last month. Transferred majority control of the salons to you. The coffee cup nearly slipped from my hand. She what? She said she had a feeling. He smiled sadly. She always did have good instincts about people. A commotion at the nurse's station made us both look up. Reed was there, arguing with security, Camille hovering behind him with her perfect makeup and predatory eyes. Sir, only family is allowed, the guard was saying. I am family, Reed's voice carried down the hall. That's my mother-in-law in there. I stood up, my body moving before my brain could catch up. Dad grabbed my arm. Let security handle it.
No.
I handed him my coffee. I need to end this now. Reed saw me coming and switched on his concerned husband act. Sloan, baby, I've been so worried. Save it. I stopped just out of reach. I saw the hotel photos. His face flickered with surprise before settling into righteous indignation. You're having me followed? Apparently someone else is. I glanced at Camille, who had the decency to look uncomfortable. What documents were you reviewing with your mother at the Grand Hotel? That's private business. Nothing about my family's business is private to you anymore. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You have exactly one chance to walk away with your dignity intact. Leave now, or I release everything I found on your laptop to every investor you've ever worked with. Camille grabbed his arm. Reed, let's go. But he shook her off, his mask finally cracking. You think you can threaten me? I know things too. Things about your father's tech patents, about what? Dad's voice came from behind me, steady and cold. Please, enlighten us about my business, Reed. I'm very interested in hearing what you think you know. The security guard stepped closer. Sir, I need you to leave. For a moment, I thought Reed might actually try to fight. But then his shoulders slumped, and I saw him clearly for the first time, a scared little boy playing at being a businessman, drowning in his own lies. This isn't over, he said, but the threat sounded hollow. Actually, it is. I turned back toward Mom's room. My lawyer will contact you tomorrow. As they were escorted out, I heard Camille hissing at Reed, but I didn't bother listening. I had more important things to focus on, like protecting what my mother had built, like being the daughter she always believed I could be, like making sure the people who tried to destroy my family never got another chance. The salon mirrors reflected my mother's empty office chair as I sorted through the mess Reed had left behind. 3 days after her stroke, and I was already finding holes in the business accounts, small at first, then larger, like a trail of breadcrumbs leading to something worse. MS. Sloan, Maria, our head stylist, appeared in the doorway. They're here again. I didn't need to ask who they were. Through the glass walls, I could see Camille and Grant in the waiting area, dressed like they were heading to a board meeting instead of a beauty salon. Send them in. I kept my eyes on the computer screen, making them wait as I finished reviewing another suspicious transaction. Sloan, darling. Camille's perfume arrived before she did. We've been trying to reach you. I've been busy discovering what your son did to my mother's business. I finally looked up. Would you like to explain these transfer authorizations with your signature on them? Grant shifted uncomfortably. Now, Sloan, business is complicated. Theft usually is. I turned the screen toward them. Did you think no one would notice? That my mother would just write it off as a family favor? Your mother understood the importance of family, Camille said, her voice sharp. Unlike you, apparently. I laughed, the sound hollow even to my own ears. Family? Is that what you call embezzlement these days? We prefer to think of it as a temporary reallocation. Grant pulled out a folder. Actually, we have a proposal that could solve everyone's problems. The only problem I have is sitting in front of me. Camille leaned forward, her designer bracelet catching the light. Your mother's in the hospital, Sloan. The business needs strong leadership. Reed has experience. Reed has experience stealing from it. I stood up, my chair rolling back. And now I know you helped him. Be reasonable, Grant pleaded. We can make this go away. Sign over controlling interest to Reed, and we'll forget about pressing charges for the irregularities we found in your father's tech patents. My blood ran cold. What irregularities? Camille smiled, all teeth and triumph. Let's just say Reed did his homework. It would be a shame if the patent office received an anonymous tip about your father's early development processes. The pieces clicked together. Reed's late nights researching, his sudden interest in Dad's old projects. They'd been planning this for months. Get out. My voice was steady, despite the rage building in my chest. Think about Lila, Camille pressed. About her future. About what a messy legal battle would do to her. Something in me snapped. I picked up my mother's heavy glass paperweight, turning it over in my hands. You know what my mother told me about building this business? She said sometimes you have to be willing to break things to build them stronger. I brought the paperweight down on the corner of her desk, cracking the glass surface. They both jumped. That was your first warning. I set the paperweight down carefully. Here's your second. I have copies of everything. Every transfer, every forged signature, every reallocation. One phone call, and it all goes to the FBI. You wouldn't, Grant stammered. Think about Reed. I am thinking about Reed. I'm thinking about how good he'll look in orange. I walked to the door, holding it open. You have 24 hours to return every penny, or I start making calls. And if you ever mention my daughter again, I'll make sure the only way you see her is through prison visiting room glass. After they scurried out, Maria appeared with a cup of tea. Your mother would be proud, she said quietly. I looked at the cracked desk, thinking of Mom lying in that hospital bed, of Dad poring over his old patents, of Lila asking why she couldn't go home. No, I replied, picking up my phone. Not yet, but she will be. I dialed my lawyer's number, watching Camille and Grant hurry to their car through the salon windows. They thought they could use my family against me? Fine. Time to show them exactly what kind of woman my mother raised. Time to make them regret ever hearing the name Sloan. The divorce papers sat untouched on Reed's desk while he paced his office like a caged animal. I'd chosen this moment carefully, after hours, when his staff had gone home. But before he could escape to whatever hotel he was hiding in these days. You can't be serious. He picked up the papers, then dropped them like they burned. After everything we've built. You mean after everything you've stolen? I stayed standing, keeping the desk between us. The salon accounts, my father's patents, our savings? I was trying to save us. He slammed his hands on the desk. Your parents have been holding us back, controlling everything with their money. The only one trying to control anything is you. I pushed the papers toward him. Sign them. He laughed, a harsh sound that made me flinch. Or what? You'll tell Daddy? Have him sue me? Go ahead. I'll drag every skeleton out of his closet. Every shortcut he took building his precious tech empire. You're bluffing. Am I? He pulled out his phone, showing me documents I'd never seen before. Your father wasn't as clean as you think. Want to know how many corners he cut? How many people he stepped on? My hands started shaking. Those are fake. The patent office won't think so. His smile turned cruel. Neither will his investors. One anonymous tip, and it all comes crashing down. You destroy him just to hurt me? I destroy him to protect what's mine. He stepped around the desk. Including you. I backed away, bumping into the wall. I was never yours to own. No. He moved closer. Then why did you marry me? Because you loved me? Or because your parents approved of my pedigree, my connections? Stop it. Face it, Sloan. You're just like me. Playing the game, using people. I'm nothing like you. Really? He grabbed my wrist as I tried to leave. Then why are you here alone? Why didn't you bring your lawyer? Because you thought you could manipulate me, just like your mother taught you. I yanked my arm free. Don't talk about my mother. Poor Marlowe, he continued, his voice mocking. All those years building her empire, and now she can't even speak to defend it. How long before the board pushes you out? A month? A week? Something inside me snapped. I grabbed the nearest object, a crystal award from his desk, and hurled it at the wall. The crash was satisfying, but not as satisfying as the way he jumped. You want to talk about manipulation? My voice shook with rage. Let's talk about how you and your parents planned this from the beginning. How you married me for my family's money. How you... The office door opened. Camille stood there, looking perfectly composed despite the late hour. I thought I heard voices. She glanced at the shattered crystal. Having a disagreement? Get out, I spat. I'm afraid I can't do that. She held up her phone. Not when I have such interesting security footage of you assaulting my son. My blood ran cold.
What?
You throwing things, threatening him. She clicked her tongue. Not very maternal behavior. I wonder what a judge would think about Lila's safety with such an unstable mother. The room spun. They'd planned this too. The confrontation, the security footage, everything. You wouldn't dare use my daughter against me. Try us. Reed's voice was soft, dangerous. Sign over your controlling interest in the salons, and we forget this happened. Fight us, and you'll lose everything. The business, your father's reputation, and Lila. I looked between them, mother and son, so alike in their calculated cruelty. All my careful plans, my evidence of their theft, meant nothing if they could paint me as unstable, dangerous. I'll give you 24 hours to decide, Camille said, as if offering a generous gift. Choose wisely. They left me there, surrounded by shattered crystal and broken dreams. My phone buzzed, a text from Dad about Mom's condition worsening. Another from my lawyer warning about Reed's countersuit. I slid down the wall, the divorce papers scattered around me like fallen leaves. For the first time since this nightmare began, I had no idea how to fight back. But I knew one thing. I couldn't let them win. Not just for me, but for Lila. For Mom. For everything our family had built. I just had to figure out how. The moment I walked into Reed's parents' house, I knew something was wrong. The place was too quiet, too still, like a trap waiting to be sprung. I found them in the study, Reed, Camille, and Grant, arranged like a tribunal behind the massive oak desk. The security footage from Reed's office played silently on a laptop between them. Where's Lila? I asked, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Safe, Camille replied. With the nanny. We thought it best to handle this professionally. I set my own laptop on the desk. Funny.
I was thinking the same thing.
Reed's smirk faltered when I opened it, revealing a video chat window. Maria's face appeared, along with my father's lawyer and, most surprisingly, Grant's former business partner, Thomas. Hello, Grant, Thomas said, his voice crackling through the speakers. Been a while. Grant's face went pale. What is this? This, I said, pulling out a USB drive, is everything. The real records from the salon accounts. Dad's original patent documentation. And something really interesting from Thomas about some creative accounting you and Reed did at your old firm.
Camille stood up sharply.
You're bluffing. Like you were bluffing about that security footage? I played my own recording from my phone, which had captured the entire setup at Reed's office. Amazing what modern phones can do, isn't it? Reed lunged for my laptop, but I was faster, stepping back. Don't bother. It's all backed up. And if anything happens to me or Lila, it goes straight to the FBI. You destroy your own family? Reed's voice cracked. Your daughter's future? No, Reed. I'm saving it. From you. We can still work this out, Camille interjected, her perfectly manicured hands spreading in a placating gesture. We're family. Family? I laughed. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't use a 3-year-old as leverage. Family doesn't. Oh, spare us the moral high ground, Reed snapped. You're just like us. Using whatever advantage you can get. The difference is, I'm not doing this for money. I turned to Thomas. Show them. Thomas shared his screen, displaying financial records that made Grant audibly gasp. This is what they really took from your mother's business, Sloan. And this. More documents appeared. This is what they were planning to do next. The room went silent except for the hum of the laptop fans. I watched their faces as they realized just how thoroughly I'd outmaneuvered them. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, pulling out a stack of papers. "You're going to sign these, all of you. Full confession of the theft, immediate repayment of everything you took, and a legally binding agreement to stay away from my family's businesses forever. And if we refuse?" Camille's voice trembled slightly. "Then Thomas sends everything to the SEC. I'm sure they'd be very interested in Grant's creative accounting methods. And Reed." I met his eyes. "Those investors you scammed? They're very eager to talk to the FBI." Reed slumped in his chair, the fight draining from him. "You've been planning this all along. I learned from the best." I pushed the papers toward them. "You taught me how to play the long game, remember?" One by one they signed. Even Camille, though her hand shook with barely suppressed rage. As Thomas and the lawyer witnessed the signatures virtually, I felt no triumph, only exhaustion. "One more thing," I said, pulling out the divorce papers. "Full custody of Lila. Non-negotiable." Reed stared at the papers for a long moment. Can I still see her?" "Supervised visits. If you get help. Real help, not just playing the victim." He signed without another word. As I packed up my laptop, Grant spoke for the first time. "What happens now?" I paused at the door.
Now?
"You get to experience what it's like to build something honest for once. To earn what you have." I looked at each of them in turn. "Consider it a gift. More than you gave my family." I left them there, surrounded by the ruins of their schemes, and went to collect my daughter. It wasn't the revenge I'd originally wanted, but it was something better, justice, with a chance for redemption. Mom would have approved. 6 months later, I stood in my mother's renovated office, watching the sunset paint the salon windows gold. The place hummed with the familiar sounds of hair dryers and quiet conversation, a symphony Mom had conducted for decades. "Ms. Sloan." Maria appeared in the doorway. "Your 4 o'clock is here." I checked my watch, surprised. "Send him in." Reed looked different, thinner, less polished. The designer suits were gone, replaced by a simple button-down and jeans. He carried a thick folder and something else I couldn't quite see. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, hovering in the doorway like a stranger, which I supposed he now was. "Lila's excited about the zoo tomorrow," I offered, keeping things neutral. The supervised visits had been going well, better than I'd expected. He nodded, then placed the folder on my desk. "I've been doing some research about small business loans, specifically for salon expansions. There's a program that could help with those 3 new locations you're planning." I stared at him. "Why?" "Because I owe you. More than money." He shifted uncomfortably. "I've been working with a financial advisor, helping other people avoid the mistakes I made. It's good work. Honest work." "And your parents?" "Haven't spoken to them since the divorce. They're in Florida now, trying to rebuild with what's left."
He paused.
"I'm not asking for forgiveness, Sloan. Just a chance to do something right for once." I opened the folder, scanning the carefully organized documents. The research was thorough, professional, exactly what the business needed. "Why now?" "Because Lila asked me something at our last visit." He pulled out what he'd been holding, a framed photo of Mom cutting the ribbon at her first salon opening. "She wanted to know if her grandmother was a superhero because of how you talk about her." My throat tightened. "What did you tell her?" I told her the truth. That her grandmother built something amazing, and that her mother is even stronger for protecting it.
He set the photo on my desk.
"I found this in my parents' storage. Thought it belonged here instead." I picked up the photo, remembering that day. I'd been 12, watching Mom shine with pride as she built her dream from nothing, just like I was doing now. "The loan program," I said finally. "Is it legitimate?" "Completely. I'll send all the information to your lawyer first. No strings, no involvement from me unless you want it." I studied him, this new version of Reed, humbled but somehow more real than the polished salesman I'd married. "I'll think about it." He turned to leave, then stopped. You know what the hardest part was? Realizing I had everything I needed already. A family, a home, love. I just couldn't see it through my own greed. And now Now I see clearly. He smiled sadly. Too late, but clearly. After he left, I sat at Mom's old desk, my desk now, and looked at the photo. The setting sun caught the glass, reflecting my own face over hers. Different women, different battles, same determination. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. Mom squeezed my hand today. Doctors say it's a good sign. I smiled, touching the frame gently. Maybe Reed wasn't the only one getting a second chance. Maria knocked softly. The staff meeting's ready. We're discussing the expansion plans. I stood, straightening my jacket. Actually, I have some new information to share about that. From Reed's proposal? Maybe. I picked up the folder. But this time, we'll do it our way. The right way. As I walked into the conference room, I caught my reflection in the salon mirrors, not just Mom's daughter anymore, but my own person. Someone who could protect what mattered while still leaving room for growth, for change, for redemption. Even for those who might not deserve it. Because that's what real strength is, not just knowing how to fight, but knowing when to build something new from the ashes of what was lost. And we were just getting started.
When I married Jerry, I inherited some real estate from my grandparents. They suggested I use it to secure our future, but advised keeping it a secret, even from Jerry. They thought it was wise to have a passive income that only I knew about, ensuring my financial security. Unfortunately, Jerry has often crossed boundaries with our possessions and finances. For example, he tried to give away gifts I bought for my parents to his own, just to boost his image. This upset me, especially when he reacted poorly to being confronted. Recently, my concerns grew when I noticed $22,000 was missing from an account I manage for our living expenses. This account was meant to supplement the income Jerry contributes. I didn't remember making such a large withdrawal, so I can only assume Jerry took the money. When I confronted him about the missing funds, he casually admitted that he had lent the money to his mother, Kayla, who was facing some troubles. He did this without my knowledge or consent. This revelation was quite shocking, as it not only involved a large sum of money, but also demonstrated a lack of communication and respect for our mutual financial decisions. Such actions have made me reconsider our relationship dynamics. If our marriage cannot be built on mutual respect and transparency, particularly regarding finances, it might be necessary to reevaluate our future together. The idea that what one spouse acquires automatically belongs to the other without discussion is not a sustainable way to manage a marriage. If this approach remains unacceptable, then perhaps, regrettably, the solution might be to consider a separation. It's all right, I suppose. After all, the money was mine, earned through hard work. We do have some savings, so the loss of that amount shouldn't be catastrophic. If Kayla was indeed facing difficulties, I understand the need to help. However, a simple conversation with me beforehand would have been appreciated. The account is jointly ours after all. Had Jerry withdrawn the money from a personal account he set up before we were married, I would have minded, but taking such a significant sum from our shared account without any discussion felt like a breach of trust. When I expressed my disappointment, Jerry's response was dismissive. He frowned, clearly irritated, and promised somewhat reluctantly to inform me next time before taking such actions. He then quickly excused himself to the bathroom. This situation left me feeling uneasy. It wasn't like the early days of our marriage when Jerry would listen sincerely and value my input. Is this what change looks like in a marriage? A few days later, circumstances led me to my in-laws' home to deliver a package mistakenly sent to our address. My mother-in-law, Amy, greeted me warmly and invited me in for tea, an invitation I felt compelled to accept despite intending just to leave the package at the door. While there, I couldn't help but notice several luxurious items around their house, expensive cosmetics, stylish clothing, and various health products. Amy casually mentioned that these were gifts from Jerry. The realization hit me hard. The missing $22,000 from our account had been used quite extravagantly. It seemed the concept of necessity had been stretched far, and the casualness with which this spending was treated made me question not only our financial partnership, but the underlying respect and communication within our marriage. Upon learning that Jerry had lent the money to his mother, Kayla, because she was in need, I tried to understand the situation. However, discovering that the funds were spent on luxury items didn't sit well with me. As I sat quietly sipping my tea, the atmosphere shifted noticeably. My in-laws' smiles faded, and they looked at me with an odd mixture of fear and accusation. My son is such a wonderful, generous boy, always buying gifts for me. My mother-in-law started, her tone turning confrontational. But what about you as his wife? Are you taking good care of my wonderful son? There seems to be some trouble. I hear he mentioned getting a lot of blame from you for using the money to help me. It became clear then that Jerry had painted himself as a victim in front of his parents, a good son merely helping out his mother, which explained their fearful and defensive attitude toward me. This revelation exhausted my patience, not just with my in-laws, but with Jerry as well. I had never anticipated such a lack of support and understanding in my marriage, pushing me to consider divorce seriously. I started envisioning a future where, post-divorce, I would move back to my parents' home, a two-story structure over 32 years old, designed before my brother was born. It used to house our family of 5 comfortably, but now it stood largely empty and was becoming impractical for my aging parents, who struggled with mobility. The house had some modifications, like handrails, but its spacious layout was more challenging to navigate for them. A one-story house would be far more suitable for their needs. With the financial security from my passive income, I could rebuild their home into something more comfortable and accessible. Filled with a mix of resolve and relief, I called my parents to discuss my plans for a divorce and the idea of reconstructing their house. Surprisingly, my parents weren't shocked by the news of the divorce. Their reaction only solidified my decision, as it seemed they too understood the need for a change, supporting my desire to start anew and build a better environment for our family. The news of rebuilding their home brought genuine joy to my parents. Over the phone, I could sense their happiness as they thanked me. "I'm glad that you're planning to rebuild it for us." "Thank you," they said. They reassured me that even if they couldn't live there for long, it wouldn't be a problem, as I could eventually take over the house since it was funded by my income. "Well then, I'll start preparing and planning it bit by bit," I replied, encouraged by their support. "Take it easy, just don't overdo it," they advised, their words lifting my spirits. As I began organizing the rebuild of my parents' house, I awaited a response from the construction company. However, before any progress was made, Jerry confronted me aggressively. "How dare you use our savings to build a house without telling me anything about it?" he accused as we sat across from each other at the living room table. He banged his fist on the table, his voice rising without any regard for my feelings. "Well, my parents will live in the new house," I stated firmly. "That's impossible because it was built for my parents to live in," he roared. He insisted that since the house was built with what he perceived as our common property, his parents had a right to live in it too. "Are you planning to cram 5 people into that little one-story house?" "Just give me the house then," Jerry demanded, hitting the table louder. Fearing his reaction if he discovered the passive income I had kept secret, I decided it was time to reveal the entire truth. "To tell you the truth, I have passive income," I confessed. "I've been saving from the real estate gifted to me by my grandparents. I paid for the rebuild with that passive income, so I didn't take a penny out of our common property. Feeling guilty for breaking a promise to my grandparents to keep this a secret, I watched as Jerry's reaction turned even more intense. He shook his shoulders in anger and pounded the table harder. "What a bad wife you are, hiding the fact that you have an income. You play around with my money and protect your own like that by keeping secrets." His words stung, but they also clarified the deep issues in our marriage. Issues of trust, respect, and shared goals, all of which seemed increasingly insurmountable. Seeing Jerry's face flush with rage, I suddenly grasped why my grandparents had advised me to keep my passive income a secret. Perhaps they had seen something in Jerry that I hadn't recognized until now. "I'll take the house as a limine. Besides, any house you build while we're married is mine too. I am the head of the family, and if you disobey me, I will divorce you," he declared arrogantly. I was overwhelmed with dismay. How had I spent so many years with a man who could so easily disregard my feelings and contributions? Initially, I had planned to use the passive income for our future, especially if Jerry's earnings were insufficient or if I was unable to work due to injury or illness. It was meant to be a safety net to support both of us, something I intended to share with him when the time was right. But now I no longer wished to use that money on him. Fed up, I stood up and left the house, needing space from the stifling atmosphere. I spent the night at a business hotel to clear my head and plan my next steps. Upon returning home the next morning, Jerry was waiting with a sly, unsettling smile. He approached me smirking and presented a sheet of paper he had been hiding. It was a set of divorce papers already filled out. "You're lying about your passive income, aren't you? You lied about it to cover up that you were taking money from our common property, didn't you?" he accused. His accusations were baseless and repetitive. Despite my honesty and the real existence of my passive income, he refused to believe me. "It's the truth. I have passive income." I insisted, but it was clear he was stuck in his narrative. Jerry's inability to trust and respect my words was the final straw, clarifying that this marriage could not provide the support or partnership I needed. The path forward seemed inevitable, and I braced myself for the next difficult steps of legally untangling our lives. Jerry forced the divorce papers into my hand with a smirk, confidently saying, "You'll let me know when we can move in, okay?" He then patted me on the shoulder, walked out the door humming cheerily, and mentioned he was going out for a drink. At that moment, it became crystal clear who Jerry really was. Throughout our marriage, he had concealed his disdain for me, never truly valuing my feelings or perspectives. This realization stung, but it also freed me. I didn't hesitate. I immediately packed my belongings, filled out the divorce papers right there, and left our home. I moved in with my parents temporarily, explaining the entire situation to them. We agreed I would stay with them until the new house was completed. The next day, I noticed my phone was inundated with missed calls from Jerry. Then he called again. I answered, hoping it would be our final conversation. "Hello, hey, all your stuff is gone," he said with an impatient tone, seemingly confused by my actions. But why was he panicking? He had pushed for the divorce after all. We are getting a divorce, so it's normal. I won't ever come back, so please use the empty spaces as you. I told him, hoping to make my intentions clear. There was a pause. Perhaps at that moment, Jerry finally realized that I had a source of income he hadn't controlled. Then switching to an unusually sweet voice, one I had never heard before, he pleaded, "Hey, can you let my parents live in the new house? I don't care if I have to live with your parents. Please." I was stunned. "I already told you it's a small one-story house," I reminded him. "It's meant as a surprise for my parents." His suggestion was absurd. Not only was he proposing to give away a house he hadn't bought, but he also announced it as if it were his to give. His reckless disregard for the truth was baffling. You don't care about the savings, do you? You have no idea how much I worried about the money I would give to you as an allowance, and the money I saved for our living expenses. He continued. This conversation only solidified my decision. Jerry's understanding of our finances and our relationship was completely skewed. It was clear that moving forward without him was not only a choice but a necessity. As I explained to Jerry the efforts I had put into managing our finances and trying to make ends meet, he disregarded the significance of my struggles. That has nothing to do with what's happening here. You are just careless with money and leave all the hassle to other people. And you present to your parents as if you prepared everything by yourself, right? I confronted him, highlighting his tendency to take credit for my efforts. Jerry's response, or rather his sudden silence, only intensified my frustration. It was clear he was trying to paint himself as the orchestrator of everything and wanted to gift the house I built for my parents to his own, capitalizing on my sincerity to impress them. It was both shallow and deceptive. In the end, you're just trying to take advantage of my goodwill and claim my property. There is no justification for you to trample on my feelings and intentions like this. I will not give you the house that I built with all my heart and soul for my parents, just so you can show off, I declared firmly, rejecting his plea outright. Jerry grew louder, perhaps in desperation. But husbands and wives are supposed to help each other. I'll tell them that you built it. Please, we're not a married couple anymore, are we? We are strangers now since I already filed for a divorce. I reminded him, reinforcing the boundaries that his actions had necessitated. On the day Jerry handed me the divorce papers, I submitted them to the city office immediately. He had been the one pushing for a divorce, and yet, when faced with the reality of our separation, he seemed incredulous. Yeah, you already filed it. Why are you so surprised when you're the one who asked for the divorce? I said, Oh, I didn't think you would leave me. Hey, let's start over. Let's talk it out and try to be a good couple this time. He pleaded as if unaware of the gravity of his previous actions. How could he say such a thing now? This was a man who had squandered our savings on his mother, threatened me with divorce, and ridiculed me to the very end. Reconciliation was out of the question. No, thank you. Please give my regards to your parents, I said brightly as I ended the call. The next day, my phone was flooded with voicemails and messages from Jerry, still demanding that we get back together. His persistence was as baffling as it was unwelcome, affirming my decision to move forward without him. Jerry claimed that we could still start over and that he loved me. But I sensed his interest lay more in my property and fortune than in our relationship. To sever ties completely, I blocked all his contact information as well as that of his parents. Meanwhile, the construction of the new house was completed, and my parents and I moved in. We are now living comfortably in the home I built. Sometime later, I met with a mutual friend who was also acquainted with Jerry, and I shared the news of our divorce. My friend offered words of sympathy and updated me on what had transpired with Jerry and his family. It turned out that Jerry had abruptly resigned from his job, claiming he no longer needed to work hard because he had acquired real estate. However, unable to contact him, his company was left in a bind. The next day, Jerry attempted to retract his resignation, but his bosses, frustrated by his unexplained disappearance and the problems it caused, lectured him. They demanded an explanation, but Jerry, unable to admit he had been banking on my income, lied about his circumstances. Eventually, the truth about our divorce came out, and his lies were exposed. His company realized he tried to manipulate things for his own benefit and refused to rehire him. Jerry, who had mocked my passive income and called it a lie, now found himself in a tough spot. He moved back in with his upset parents and is struggling to find a new job due to his shady departure from his last one. It seems he's finally facing the consequences of his actions. As for me, life has taken a positive turn. I'm living with my parents in the house I built, working in my dream job, and enjoying life. The passive income I saved for our future is now going to support those who have stood by me. This change has brought me a sense of renewal and peace, proving that moving on was the best choice for my well-being. I'm Ava, an editor at a big publishing house downtown. I'm just a regular person who prefers to keep things simple. Life's always a bit of a juggling act with deadlines and finding some me time. That's probably why dating never really interested me. I enjoyed my own company, usually with a good book or a peaceful walk in the park near my apartment. Everything changed one sunny Saturday that seemed just like any other. I was absorbed in a podcast, strolling along without a care. The park was bustling with people, pets, and kids playing around. I must have lost track of where I was walking because suddenly, a guy on a bicycle nearly collided with me. "Watch it," he shouted, swerving at the last second. His tone was sharp and annoyed. "I'm so sorry," I said quickly, pulling out one earbud. I hadn't realized I'd wandered onto the bike path. He stopped his bike and turned around, looking more amused than angry. "Now you've got to watch where you're going. This path's a jumble sometimes." "Yeah, my bad. Totally my fault," I admitted, feeling a bit embarrassed. I brushed a stray lock of hair from my face and gave him a sheepish smile. He laughed, and just like that, the tension dissolved. "I'm Tom," he said, extending a hand. "Ava," I replied, shaking his hand. His grip was firm and confident. "So, Ava, always this distracted, or is it just my charming presence?" He had this cheeky grin that made me chuckle. Just a long week at work. My brain's off, enjoying the weekend already. Fair enough. I was just about to grab a coffee at that place over there. He pointed to a small cafe at the edge of the park. "Care to join me, as a peace offering for almost sending me flying?" I considered it for a moment. He seemed nice, and honestly, I could use a coffee. Sure, why not? I could use a good coffee story to tell. As we walked to the cafe, Tom was easy to talk to. He told me about his job at a car sales company and how he liked to spend his weekends biking or hanging out with friends. He wasn't from the city. He moved here because he thought it offered more opportunities. Big city dreams, he said with a smirk. I shared a bit about my job too, how I loved books and ended up making a career out of that passion. "Beats being stuck in a cubicle doing something you hate," I added. We reached the cafe and ordered our coffees. While we waited, I couldn't help but notice how comfortable I felt around him. It was strange because usually I'm a bit reserved around new people, but with Tom, the conversation just flowed. After meeting Tom, we started hanging out more. He was funny and easygoing, but it wasn't long before I started noticing little things that bugged me. It was nothing major at first, just small comments here and there that made me raise an eyebrow. One Saturday, we decided to go out for dinner, and somehow the topic of careers and family came up. We were just chatting about work and life, nothing serious, or so I thought. "So how's the book world treating you?" Tom asked, taking a sip of his beer. "It's busy as always." "Deadlines don't stop for anyone," I replied, poking at my salad. "Yeah, I get that, but you wouldn't want to be stuck in that forever, right? I mean, eventually, you'd want to settle down, maybe cut back on the work hours," he said casually. I paused, fork midair. "Not really, Tom. I love what I do. I don't see myself giving it up anytime soon. Or ever, really. Tom shrugged. Sure, but what about when we have kids? Wouldn't you want to be around more? The question caught me off guard. We? I chuckled nervously. That's jumping way ahead, don't you think? He laughed it off. Yeah, you're right. Just thinking out loud, I guess. I tried to shake off the discomfort, but it lingered. A couple of weeks later, Tom invited me to have dinner with his parents. I figured it was a good sign, things getting serious and all. I was nervous but hopeful. That dinner, though, opened my eyes a bit more. His parents lived in a cozy, well-kept house in the suburbs. His mom, Mrs. Reed, was all smiles when we arrived. Ava, so lovely to finally meet you. Tom has told us so much about you, she gushed, pulling me into a hug. Thank you for having me, Mrs. Reed. It's great to meet you, too. I managed to say, returning her smile. Dinner was served, and everything was going well until Mrs. Reed started talking about family and marriage. You know, Tom was always the responsible one. She began, serving herself some more potatoes. We've always told him the importance of finding a good girl who knows her way around the house. Tom's dad nodded. Absolutely. It's about building a good foundation, you know. A man needs to provide, and a woman, well, she takes care of the home. I glanced at Tom, hoping he'd say something, but he just focused on his food. Mrs. Reed continued, it's how we raised our boys. Family first, right, Tom? Right, Mom, Tom said, finally looking up. His agreement felt like a punch to the gut. I tried to keep my cool. It's interesting because I've always been pretty career-oriented. I love my job, and I believe in contributing equally. Mrs. Reed smiled a bit too sweetly. Of course, dear, but you'll see. Priorities change when you start having children. It's only natural for a woman to want to stay at home with her babies. The rest of the evening, I felt like I was in a fog. We left shortly after dinner, and on the drive back, the air between us was tense. Your mom has some strong opinions about family roles, I said, breaking the silence. Do you see things that way too? He hesitated, then said, I think there's some truth to it. I mean, it worked for my parents. Despite the uneasy dinner with Tom's parents, our relationship marched forward. Somehow, the good times seemed to outweigh the bad, and I found myself agreeing to marry him. Looking back, love must have blinded me because those warning bells were still ringing in the back of my mind. The wedding planning started, and it was all a whirlwind. Tom wanted something simple, and so did I. We decided on a modest ceremony with just close family and friends. As the day approached, the real pressure began to mount, not about the event, but about what our lives would become afterward. After the ceremony, at the reception, Tom's mom pulled me aside. Her smile was wide, but her eyes were serious. Ava, dear, I'm so happy for you both. Remember, a good wife supports her husband no matter what. Thank you, Mrs. Reed. I intend to be a supportive partner, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. And remember, dear, when the babies start coming, it's best if you're at home. You can't trust strangers to raise your children. Her words felt like a warning, and the finality in her tone made my stomach turn. I just nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Later, Tom and I had a moment alone. Your mom talked to me about kids and me not working. I started, watching his reaction closely. Yeah, she's just looking out for the future. She means well, Ava. You know how moms are. Tom brushed it off, taking a sip of his champagne. But you know I'm not planning to quit my job, right? Even when we have kids, I pressed, needing him to understand. Tom paused, his face serious. We'll see, Ava. Things change. We'll do what's best for our family. After our wedding, Tom suggested we move to a larger apartment, closer to his work at the car sales company. The place was nice, bigger than our old one, but it was right next door to his parents' house. I had my suspicions about why he chose this particular spot, but I agreed, hoping for the best. Once settled, the reality of our new life together began to surface. Tom started bringing up his idea of a traditional family more often, where he would be the breadwinner, and I would handle the household and eventually the kids. One evening, we sat down with our finances spread across the dining table, a mess of bills and budgets under the dim light. I tried to show him how keeping both our jobs was more beneficial, especially with the economy being unstable. Look at these numbers, Tom. With both incomes, we're not just getting by. We're actually saving. It makes no sense for me to quit my job, I said, pointing at the spreadsheet. Tom shook his head, pushing the papers away slightly. It's not just about the money, Ava. It's about having a real family life, like my parents had. I sighed, my frustration growing. But it's not the past, Tom. Things are different now. We both need to contribute. He didn't seem convinced, and the discussion ended with a heavy silence. The situation got more complicated with his mother, Mrs. Reed, living so close. She dropped by often, unannounced, each visit with a new critique about how I was managing our home. One afternoon, I was sorting through some work emails when she came in without a greeting. She started inspecting the house, wiping her finger along the bookshelf, looking for dust. Hava, you really should focus more on keeping a cleaner house. A dusty home is not a healthy home, she said, her tone sharp. I clenched my teeth, trying to keep my cool. I cleaned yesterday, Mrs. Reed, and I work full-time. It's just a little dust. That's just it. You worked too much. If you were home more, maybe things wouldn't slip through, she countered, walking over to the linen closet. Next, she pulled out a sheet, checking for any signs of improper laundering. I followed her, my hands balled into fists at my sides. I manage my time just fine, Mrs. Reed. Tom and I are both happy with how things are. She tutted, shaking her head as she moved to the kitchen to scrutinize the contents of our fridge. A woman's place is taking care of her home and her husband. These modern ideas about women needing careers are nonsense. Every comment stung, and I felt my defenses rise. Maybe that worked for you, but I'm not you. I won't just quit my job to become someone I'm not. When Tom came home that evening, I tried to explain how suffocating his mother's visits were becoming. He listened, but his response chilled me. Mom's just trying to help Ava. She has a lot of experience running a home. But it's our home, not hers. I need you to stand up for me, for us, I pleaded. Tom looked torn, but finally said, She's my mom, Ava. She means well. We should at least consider her advice. The argument that night was long and painful. We went to bed angry, the first of many silent nights. As the days turned into weeks, I felt more like an intruder in my own home, constantly judged and found wanting. The pressure to conform to an outdated idea of a wife was relentless, and my resolve to maintain my independence was tested every day. As the months rolled by, Tom's nagging about me not pulling my weight at home started to increase. He'd come home from work, look around with a scowl, and comment on the dusty shelves, or the dinner that was either too bland or overcooked, because I'd rushed it after a long day at the publishing house. His favorite refrain became, if you can't manage both, maybe you shouldn't be working. One evening, after a particularly harsh critique of some slightly undercooked pasta, Tom let it drop. Ava, I'm serious. If you can't meet me halfway and take care of the house properly, maybe we should rethink this whole arrangement, he said, implying that a divorce was on the table. I loved Tom despite everything. I didn't want our marriage to fail over something like this, so I made a decision that pained me deeply. The next day, I talked to my boss, Ellen, about quitting my job to become a full-time housewife. Ellen was shocked and tried to persuade me otherwise. "Ava, you're one of our best. Are you sure about this?" she asked, concern etching her features. "I don't see any other way, Ellen. I have to try to make things work at home," I admitted, feeling defeated. Ellen, ever the problem solver, proposed a compromise. "What if you could work from home, manage your projects remotely? It's becoming more common now. You wouldn't have to quit." The idea seemed like a lifeline. I agreed to the arrangement, but decided not to tell Tom. Instead, I told him I had resigned. He was overjoyed, thinking I had chosen our home life over my career. So I started my new job as a housewife, seeing Tom off to work each morning and greeting him when he came home. But as soon as he left, I'd power up my laptop and dive into my editing work. It was a strange double life, but it worked. The money I earned from my remote job I secretly saved in a separate bank account, just in case. However, living on just Tom's salary was tougher than we thought. Despite my best efforts to economize, 3 months later we were scraping the bottom of the barrel. I tried to bring up the topic gently. "Tom, I think it might be necessary for me to go back to work. We're running through our savings too fast." Tom's reaction was swift and angry. "That's because you're spending too much. You need to learn how to save properly," he snapped. I was stunned. I hadn't bought anything for myself in months and always hunted for the cheapest deals at the supermarket. His words hurt deeply, and I felt a mix of anger and humiliation. The next day, his mother came over with a mission to teach me proper budgeting. She dragged me to the store and pointed out the cheapest, often poorest quality products. "Buy these, Ava. Stop wasting money on expensive stuff," she lectured as we walked down the aisles. Back home, she showed me how to dilute dish soap to make it last longer. "You use too much. You need to make do with less," she instructed, her tone patronizing. She even started checking my receipts, scolding me for any purchase she deemed unnecessary. "Why are you buying this? Just stick to basics," she would say, shaking her head in disapproval. Living like this was unbearable. Every day felt more suffocating than the last. I was losing my sense of self to their imposed austerity, living under constant surveillance. The situation was becoming untenable. I was trapped in a life of pretended submission, and every part of me screamed for escape. But for now, I held on, biding my time and planning my next steps carefully. It all reached a boiling point. One drizzly Tuesday evening, I was on the phone in the living room, pouring my heart out to my mom. "I just don't know how much more I can take, Mom. His mother is constantly over here, teaching me how to stretch a dollar until it screams. I get it, we need to save, but this is too much." Mom's voice was a mix of concern and anger. "Ava, that's not normal. You need to have a conversation with Tom about boundaries. It's your home too, not just his or his mother's playground." Just as I was nodding, feeling a bit strengthened by my mom's support, Tom stormed in from the other room, his face red with anger. He must have heard me complaining. He snatched the phone right out of my hand. A wife shouldn't be complaining about her husband and mother-in-law like some street gossip. He snapped into the phone before hanging up. I was shocked, my hand shaking a bit. "Tom, you can't just grab my phone and talk to my mom that way." "Oh, I can't. Maybe if you had some respect for us, I wouldn't have to," he retorted, his voice rising as I could see the veins in his neck bulging. "Tom, listen to yourself. Can't you see this isn't healthy?" I pleaded, hoping to reach some part of him that remembered what love felt like, but he was beyond reason. "Healthy? My mom was right. I should never have married you." His words cut deeper than I would have expected. "That's enough, Tom. I'm your wife, not some puppet you and your mom can control." I shot back, my own anger flaring up now. "Then act like it or leave," he shouted, his face just inches from mine. I stared at him, disbelief and sadness warring inside me. "You want me to leave at 4:00 a.m.? It's dark and pouring rain outside. If you don't like how things are, then yes, get out." His eyes were cold and unyielding. I knew then that nothing I could say would change his mind or the situation. Shaking, I grabbed a few essentials: my laptop, some clothes, and my phone. I went for my purse next, but Tom was quicker. He grabbed it first, holding it out of my reach. "You think you're leaving with this? I earned this money, not you." "Fine, keep it," I said, my voice hollow. I couldn't believe this was happening. I called a taxi and waited by the door, my heart pounding. The taxi pulled up, and I stepped out into the cold night air, the rain drenching me immediately. As I climbed into the car, a sense of surreal calm settled over me. I was doing this. I was leaving. At the hotel, as I lay in the unfamiliar bed, I couldn't help but feel a surge of relief amidst the turmoil. Despite everything, I hadn't quit my job. My secret savings account, unknown to Tom, was now my lifeline. The first light of dawn was barely peeking through the curtains when I got up. I hadn't slept much, the weight of my decision pressing down on me through the night. Today was the day I would take control back. I had an appointment with a lawyer to talk about filing for divorce. It felt surreal, like a scene from someone else's life, not mine. The lawyer's office was a stark, unassuming place, tucked between a row of old brick buildings. Inside Mr. Henderson, my lawyer, was a straight-talking man who wasted no time. "Let's get down to business," he said as soon as I sat down. "You're here to file for divorce, correct?" "Yes," I confirmed, my voice steadier than I expected. "I can't go back to the way things were." Mr. Henderson nodded, his face serious. "All right, I'll need all the details. Any joint accounts, property, anything that needs untangling." We spent the next hour going over everything. He explained the legal process, what I could expect, and what my rights were. He was thorough, ensuring I understood every step before drawing up the necessary documents. "You'll need to serve these to your husband," he instructed, handing me the envelope sealed with a stamp that felt like the seal on my old life. Armed with the divorce papers, I went back to the apartment I had shared with Tom. He was still asleep, probably exhausted from last night's fallout. The apartment felt different as I packed my things. Every item I tucked away marked the end of another shared chapter. By the time I finished packing, Tom was stirring. He wandered into the kitchen, bleary-eyed and clearly confused, to see my bags piled by the door. "What's going on?" he mumbled, scratching his head. I didn't have much to say, just actions to take. Instead of answering, I handed him the envelope. "These are for you," I said, my voice void of the emotion I felt turning inside. Tom tore open the envelope, a frown forming as he scanned the contents. "Divorce?" He laughed, disbelief lacing his tone. "You think you can just walk out and everything will be all right?" He looked up from the papers, his eyes cold. "Come back when you're ready to apologize, and maybe I'll consider taking you back. But remember, you'll have to listen to my mother from now on." The absurdity of his words almost made me laugh, but I held it back. "I'm not coming back, Tom. I'm done. We're done." Walking out of that apartment, the air felt different, crisper, almost hopeful. I went straight to a new place I had rented days before. Small but mine alone, a place where I could start rebuilding. Each step felt heavy but right. A few weeks after moving in, I was back at the office, fully immersing myself in the whirlwind of publishing deadlines and author meetings. Being around my colleagues again, feeling the familiar rush of a fast-approaching deadline, reignited a spark in me that I thought I had lost. Days at the office turned into weeks, and soon I was back to my old routine, juggling manuscripts and deadlines with newfound efficiency fueled by my recent personal upheavals. It felt good to be back, really good. The familiar landscape of texts and typos was more comforting than I could have imagined. During this time, I reconnected with old friends, people who had known me long before Tom. We gathered for drinks after work, shared meals on weekends, and slowly I started feeling more like myself than I had in years. Their laughter and light-hearted teasing grounded me, and in their company, I rediscovered parts of myself I'd forgotten. A few months into this new phase of my life, an unexpected call came. It was Tom, his voice awkward and tinged with desperation. "Hey, I got laid off. Things are pretty rough," he started, his words stumbling over each other. "I was thinking maybe you could help me out financially." The request hung in the air, audacious and somewhat insulting given our history. "And maybe we could start over, rebuild. I mean, if you apologize to me and my mom, show some commitment here." His voice trailed off, hopeful yet uncertain. I couldn't hold it in, I just burst out laughing. The absurdity of his proposal after everything was too much. "Tom, you actually think I'd come back to support you and your parents after you kicked me out? You're out of a job, and suddenly all your high and mighty principles are gone." There was a pause on the line. "So that's a no." He sounded smaller, deflated. "Tom, I'm doing great, really great. And honestly, I'm enjoying my freedom too much to give it up again. I hope you find your way, but it won't be with me." My words were clear, sealing the end of our relationship. After I hung up, I felt a rush of empowerment. Tom's call, as ridiculous as it was, confirmed something crucial for me. I was truly free, and nothing was going to change that. A few weeks ago, I lost my dad after a long battle with his health. I'm Kelly, and I often find myself wishing I could have introduced him to his grandchildren. This thought always leaves me with a heavy heart. 5 years ago, when I was 37, I got married. On that joyful day, my dad and I made a special promise. I'd be the first to tell him if I was expecting. Sadly, that's a promise I'll never be able to fulfill, and it's my biggest regret about my dad. His illness was discovered a year ago, and since then, I did everything I could to be there for him. I visited our childhood home more often, spent many hours at the hospital with my mom, and made sure to call or video chat even more. Despite all of this, I sometimes wonder if it was enough. I'd often think to myself, could I have done more? Lost in thought, I whispered these words, and my mom, always supportive, comforted me, saying, "Kelly, you did everything you could." Your dad knew that, and he was proud. Just then, my sister Julia walked in with a man who looked to be about 45, probably the lawyer. "This is Scott, the attorney," she introduced him, and my mom quickly offered him a seat. As soon as we all sat down, Julia couldn't hold back and mentioned that the lawyer said Dad left us a significant inheritance. I couldn't help but respond, "Julia, you know it's not all yours." That comment instantly changed the mood. My sister and I have always had a rocky relationship, made worse by our dad's illness. Her refusal to visit our dad, even though I tried to bring them closer, didn't help. Her attitude has always been a problem, and it became even more noticeable during these difficult times. Looking back, my words to her might have been too harsh, driven by my worry for our father. However, her response didn't make things better. "You're an adult. There's no need to be so stubborn. I pointed out, to which she snapped back, "I'm not being stubborn." Living in the city and traveling to the countryside isn't as simple as you think. "It's just a 5-hour drive," I responded, but she argued back, saying that those 5 hours aren't just about time. It costs money, and yes, money is important to her, she told me. She's busy and asked me to stop bothering her. That ended our conversation. Despite the distance, I always thought she could make an effort to visit now and then. This belief was a big reason why our relationship started to fall apart. In the end, she never visited our father, and the distance between us only grew. The tension in the room increased until the lawyer stepped in and suggested we all take a moment to calm down. I apologized, saying, "I'm sorry," which seemed to make things a bit better. The lawyer then explained, "As I mentioned over the phone, I'm here about your father's will." My mother, looking confused, asked quietly, "When was this arranged?" The lawyer replied, "A few weeks before he passed, your father reached out to me. He asked you to come to the hospital." My mother asked. The lawyer answered, "Yes. I drafted the will there with him, and his primary doctor was there too. It was arranged that the doctor would notify me after your father passed, which is why I contacted you now." The lawyer then took out a white envelope and placed it in front of us. Recognizing my father's handwriting on the envelope, I whispered, "That's definitely Dad's handwriting." Julia, visibly impatient, demanded, "Just get on with it." "What does it say?" "You know I'm busy." The lawyer, with a slight smile, opened the envelope. Inside, there was a single piece of paper outlining the inheritance: the house, some land, some savings, and a storage shed. We knew about the house and the land, but the mention of a storage shed was new to me. My sister, frustrated, turned to the lawyer and asked, "Wait, what about the farm?" The lawyer echoed, a bit surprised, "Yes, the farm." I explained, our father used to work on it as a hobby. He had run a successful business in a nearby town, but decided to slow down after turning 55. Thinking about closing the company to spend more time on his hobbies, including the farm. This new mention of the farm added another layer to our father's legacy and what he left behind. During my high school years, I remember saying that I wanted to take life a bit slower. My sister, who was in college at the time, didn't agree with this more relaxed approach, but both my mom and I were worried about my dad's health and supported the idea. "Don't worry about money, Julia. We've got plenty of savings," my dad reassured her. Though hesitant, she eventually agreed. After that conversation, my dad did wind down his business and started farming close to our home. "There's something fulfilling about working with the land," he would say, his face lighting up with joy. Seeing how happy he was made me feel that we made the right choice, though Julia seemed less convinced. Despite promising to come back home after graduation, Julia chose to build her career near her university and eventually married the CEO of an IT firm she met through her job. That's how things were when my father took up farming until his health started to decline. Julia insisted that the farm be included in the inheritance. At her insistence, the lawyer checked the documents and found that the farm was actually leased land. I had mistakenly thought we owned a large piece of land. Julia seemed disappointed by this discovery, but knowing little about farming ourselves, I felt it might be for the best. The discussion then turned to how the inheritance would be divided. "The house and the surrounding land will go to the wife," the lawyer said. Julia smirked, probably thinking about how the remaining assets would be split. "The rest, including the savings and the storage shed, should be divided between you three," the lawyer suggested. "Savings? That means cash, right?" "I'll take that," Julia said, focusing on the money. The total savings amount to approximately $300,000, and this sum is not subject to inheritance tax, the lawyer informed us. "I want the $300,000 in cash," Julia declared, feeling like she had won. But this didn't sit well with me, and I spoke up. "Hold on, I don't agree. Why should you get all the cash?" I protested. "Because I'm the eldest," she argued, as if that settled it. "Fine, you can have the storage shed." "What's that even worth anyway?" she added dismissively, turning back to the lawyer for more details. "It's the shed next to the farm. Whoever inherits it will own the structure, the land it's on, and anything inside it," the lawyer explained. Suddenly, Julia's attitude changed when she heard there was additional land. It struck me as odd that even though she was married to a successful CEO, her desire for more seemed never-ending. As the lawyer explained more about the storage shed, he mentioned it came with a small piece of land, about 90 square feet, roughly the size of a small bedroom. He then laid out some photos of the shed for us to see, showing both the outside and inside. The shed looked quite run down from the outside, and inside it only had simple gardening tools like hoses, scissors, and shovels. Nothing that seemed particularly valuable. My sister made a face of disgust when she saw the photos. "I don't want this," she said, looking closely at the images. They really just showed everyday items, more valuable for their memories than for money. "Fine, you take the cash." "I want nothing to do with that old shed," she said, clearly wanting to distance herself from what she saw as a worthless inheritance. "Hold on, that seems unfair," I protested, realizing how uneven the division was. My sister quickly agreed to take the cash, knowing it was the more valuable option, leaving me with what she saw as worthless. Her insistence made me feel trapped, especially when my mother said, "As long as Julia doesn't complain later, I see no problem with this arrangement." Complain? Why would I? Julia quickly agreed, satisfied with getting the cash, leaving me with the shed. I couldn't hide my disappointment, but before I could argue more, Julia dismissed my concerns, accusing me of being too sentimental. "You care more about our father than money, right?" she challenged, leaving me momentarily speechless. It's true that family should be valued over money, but her quick decision left me feeling unsettled. In the end, my mother inherited the house and land. Julia happily took all of Dad's savings, and I was left with the neglected shed. After agreeing to the division, Julia even signed a document promising not to dispute how the inheritance was split, laughing confidently as she did so. I couldn't contain my frustration and later expressed my disappointment to my mother. "Why didn't you support me?" I asked, feeling let down. My mother insisted she had helped, claiming that her involvement made sure I got the shed. "But I'm not happy with just the shed," I argued, unable to see its value. "You might find something unexpectedly wonderful if you give it a chance," my mom suggested, trying to be optimistic. Despite my frustrations, her words sparked a faint glimmer of hope. Maybe there was more to the shed than it seemed, a thought that left me wondering. I tried to make sense of the day's events. After getting the key from the lawyer, I walked to the shed, which was beside a field about 15 minutes away from our house. The path was quiet and rarely used, adding to the peaceful yet somber atmosphere. The field, which my father had leased until he recently went into the hospital, was now empty, giving the place an untouched and solemn feeling. When I unlocked the shed, I was greeted by a thick layer of dust, showing how long it had been neglected. "Wow, it's really dusty," I said, noticing the heavy scent of disuse in the air. Even though I felt a bit disappointed at first, I still hoped to find something special of my father's, maybe a keepsake inside. As I looked around the shed, it quickly became clear that it was just a simple space filled with farming tools. These items might have held sentimental value, but they didn't seem particularly special at first glance. I thought to myself, maybe I should just take what's inside for now, as I scanned the dim and cluttered surroundings. Then I noticed something odd about the shed's size. It seemed smaller on the inside than it did from the outside, which puzzled me. Was it a trick of the light, or was my mind playing tricks on me? I stepped outside to get a better look, still curious about this strange difference. Driven by curiosity, I decided to explore the outside of the shed. As I walked around to the back, hidden among a dense group of trees, I found a second door. Wait, another entrance. I gasped. From inside the shed, there had been no sign of this door. It looked like there was only one way in and out. This discovery hinted at a hidden space, only accessible from this secret back door. A surge of excitement rushed through me. Could this be one of Dad's secrets? He loved surprising us, always finding joy in the unexpected, like the surprises he planned for my birthdays. The memories brought tears to my eyes as I re-entered the shed, determined to find the key to this hidden door. After a thorough search, I was ready to discover what lay beyond it. I found 4 keys cleverly hidden inside the handle of a shovel. Excited, I rushed to the back door and tried one of the keys. With a satisfying click, the door swung open. Inside this small hidden space stood a large safe, alone and imposing. Is this from Dad's company? I wondered aloud as a flood of questions filled my mind. What secrets did it hold? Was this my father's way of leaving a final piece of himself behind? The discovery hinted at parts of my father's life that I had yet to uncover, like a personal treasure hunt he had left for me to explore. I immediately recognized the safe as the one that used to sit in the corner of my father's office, a familiar sight from my childhood. Seeing it brought a wave of nostalgia over me. This safe was a real connection to my father, making the inheritance feel even more meaningful. Knowing my dad, this felt like just the beginning of his final surprises for me. There's got to be more. I whispered to myself as I used the 3rd key to unlock the safe. The door creaked open, revealing contents that left me completely amazed and unexpectedly realizing how important this discovery was. I quickly secured the safe and went to tell my mother. Later, with my husband's help, we moved the safe from my parents' home. It occurred to me that these valuable items, likely part of my inheritance, might have tax implications. Wanting to handle this properly, I decided to seek legal advice. Following the lawyer's suggestion, I contacted a certified public accountant, CPA, recommended by a friend to help navigate the possible tax issues. This professional took care of the complicated details, making sure everything was in order. A year passed as we dealt with these matters when unexpectedly, my sister showed up at my home. Her visit was surprising, especially considering our strained relationship over the inheritance. I was just in the area, she claimed, but her uneasy behavior and the fact that we lived 20 minutes apart made her visit seem less than casual. Despite our complicated history, I invited her in. After serving coffee, she seemed restless and finally asked, "Did you win the lottery or something?" Her question puzzled me. I never played the lottery, and it wasn't the time for my husband's holiday bonus. "What are you getting at?" I asked, trying to understand her point. I finally asked her to clarify her strange accusations. Her mood shifted suddenly to irritation. "Are you making fun of me?" she accused. Her reaction confused me even more, as her question seemed completely unexpected. I had no idea what made her think I had come into a lot of money, especially since only my family knew about the mysterious contents of the safe. My sister was filled with curiosity about money, insisting that I must have received a significant amount. She told me about a recent conversation with our aunt in the city, who unknowingly sparked her curiosity. Our aunt mentioned receiving a $5,000 gift card from me as a thank you for visiting our father during his illness. This gesture led my sister to wildly speculate that I had stumbled upon some unexpected fortune. "You've come into some money, haven't you?" "Just admit it," she pressed, looking for answers. Understanding what had led to her questions, I sighed, which only irritated her more. "What's with the attitude? Are you making fun of me?" she demanded. I tried to explain that it was just a gesture of appreciation, but she questioned where the money for such gifts came from. I reminded her of the inheritance, specifically the dusty shed she had dismissed, and then revealed the discovery of the safe inside it, a real treasure trove left by our father. The safe contained a collection of valuable watches, a passion of our father's. Although I wasn't sure of their exact worth, it was clear they were valuable, especially considering the modest savings left behind. This revelation led to a discussion about the possibility of having to pay inheritance tax, a concern my mother had raised when she learned what was inside the safe. "What should I do, Mom?" I asked, seeking her advice. My mother suggested handling everything openly and honestly, reminding me that secrets like these usually come to light eventually. Following her advice, I contacted the lawyer we had previously consulted. The lawyer explained that the value of inherited items determines whether inheritance tax applies. This led me to take the responsible step of accurately declaring the inheritance and ensuring I was complying with all the legal and financial requirements of my newfound wealth. By seeking professional advice, I found out that a certified public accountant, CPA, could help manage the valuation and tax obligations of the inherited watches for me. Trusting the CPA with this task, we discovered that the collection was worth an incredible $500,000. Because of their high value, it was clear that inheritance tax needed to be paid. The sensible advice was to keep only the watches that held sentimental value to me and sell the others to someone who could appreciate and afford them. This approach not only made financial sense, but also felt right emotionally. From the money made from the sale, I was able to cover the inheritance tax and also send gift cards to relatives who supported us during my father's illness. This is what had sparked my sister's curiosity. Among the keepsakes, I chose to keep my father's pocket watch. It wasn't worth much in terms of money, but it was rich in memories. I shared this story with my sister, showing her the pocket watch and trying to explain its sentimental value. However, her reaction was lukewarm. She seemed more interested in what was sold than what was kept. When she asked about the remaining watches and the safe, I told her it was our mother's house and explained its size and importance to our father's business. Her response was thoughtful, which left me feeling uneasy about her intentions. However, she left without asking any more questions, much to my relief, though I couldn't shake off an unsettling sense of worry. My fears were somewhat confirmed that very night when I received a distressing call from my mother, urging my husband and me to come to her house quickly. As we approached, the scene was alarming. Red lights flashing in the darkness, police cars stationed outside. Pushing through the gathering crowd, I found my mother and learned what had happened. She had been getting ready for bed when she heard strange noises that startled her. It sounded like someone was frantically searching through the house. With no one else home to help, my mother made a quick decision to escape through a window, driven by fear and desperation. Her description of the situation was unnerving, painting a picture of a night filled with panic and uncertainty. Under the cover of darkness, my mother had noticed the eerie glow of a flashlight moving inside the house, confirming her fears of a burglary. In a state of panic, she made her escape and sought help from our neighbor, who, after seeing the suspicious activity, quickly called the police, convinced that a burglar was in the house. But the supposed intruder was actually my sister Julia, who had decided to search the safe after hearing about my inheritance earlier that day. Not knowing her intentions, both my mother and the neighbor were understandably alarmed. When the police arrived, the situation escalated. Julia, caught off guard and feeling guilty, tried to flee the scene in a panic. Ironically, as she attempted to escape, she collided with the safe, causing it to tip over and trap her underneath. This accident led to her being rushed to the hospital with complaints of leg pain, leaving us all in disbelief over her actions. After this chaos, my mother and I found ourselves apologizing to the responding officers for the misunderstanding. I also felt the need to inform Julia's husband about the incident, only to learn from him that Julia had been hiding a significant amount of debt due to her extravagant spending on luxury items. Their recent argument had ended with her storming out, determined to borrow money from our mom to settle her financial troubles. What we didn't know was that she had already used up her inheritance in an attempt to pay off her debt. Julia's husband, already stressed from discovering her financial mismanagement, declared his intention to divorce her after hearing about her latest escapade. This revelation explained Julia's desperate actions that night, which led to a tense scene at the hospital where her husband brought up the subject of divorce. The entire ordeal turned into a dramatic clash, highlighting the serious consequences of Julia's actions and the turmoil they caused in our family. Julia was adamant, insisting, "I'm not getting a divorce, absolutely not." But the reality of her situation became clear when her husband presented the divorce papers. Faced with undeniable evidence of their broken relationship, she had no choice but to sign them. Now confined to her hospital bed, with a mix of shock and resignation, she was flipping through a part-time job magazine, clearly thinking about how to tackle her debt with new employment. While this turn of events was unfortunate, it offered a small glimmer of hope that she might finally take responsibility for her actions. After everything that happened, I made an important decision to move back to my childhood home. The chaos had definitely made me worried about my mother's well-being, but there was also a happier reason behind my choice. I found out what I'm expecting. After a lot of discussion, my husband and I agreed that moving back would be the best decision. This way, we can have my mother's support as our family grows. Even though I regret that my father couldn't be part of this joyful news, I find comfort in believing he would have shared in our happiness. As I step into this new chapter, the excitement of welcoming a healthy child fills me with peace and hope for the future, despite the recent family troubles. My name is Emily, and I'm 27 years old. Recently, my mother called me for the first time in nearly 3 years. She reached out because my sister and her husband are going through a tough time. Here's some context. The man who is now my sister's husband was once my fiancé. My sister, who's 23 and whom I'll call Kelly, ended up with my ex-fiancé, Jack, who is also 27. Jack and I had been together since college. After almost 3 years together, he proposed to me and threw a surprise party that night. I remember feeling on top of the world until about 2:00 p.m. that day. I decided to step out into the backyard to get better phone reception, and that's when I saw my sister and Jack. They were making out so passionately that it took them a few seconds to even notice me standing there. Completely shocked, I couldn't believe he would do this to me, especially after almost 3 years together and on the night of our engagement. When they finally noticed me, they quickly pulled apart, but it was too late. I ran to my car and drove as fast as I could to the nearest hotel. I was in complete shock, trying to process what I had just seen, hoping it wasn't true. Then I received a text from Kelly apologizing and saying she was in love with Jack. Apparently, this had been going on for a long time. I was in my hotel room when I got that text, and I broke down like never before. After that, Jack texted me too, saying pretty much the same thing. He told me that he had only proposed to me because he thought that if he committed to me, he could push Kelly out of his mind. Obviously, that didn't work, and it made him want Kelly even more. He said it wasn't about me, but it was about them. They just knew they were meant to be together. I was just a stand-in, a way for Jack to eventually meet Kelly. I stayed at the hotel for a few days, trying to pull myself together. I was still feeling lost and trying to convince myself that this was just a bad joke life was playing on me. After almost 5 days, I finally went back home because I needed to get my things and go back to work if I didn't want to get fired. When I got home, I realized that my family had been staying with Jack, all under the same roof, waiting for me to return. It might have been touching if it weren't for the reason I left in the first place. Everyone had been trying to text me and get a response from me nonstop after I disappeared, but I hadn't answered a single one of those messages. So when I finally came back, there was a lot of chaos. Everyone made sure to hug me and tell me how glad they were to see me. Even Kelly had the nerve to come up to me with tears in her eyes and give me a big hug. When she saw me, I was too shocked to even react and just stood there silently while everyone crowded around me. Finally, when things calmed down, I cleared my throat and told them that I was only back to get my things and move out for good. Jack had been standing there quietly until that point, but when I said I was leaving, he announced that I didn't need to go because he had already packed his stuff and was moving in with Kelly. Now that everything was out in the open, my family, including my parents, my aunt, and my dad's youngest sister, who has lived with us since her husband passed away, had big smiles on their faces. There was nothing to smile about, at least not from my perspective. Kelly stood next to Jack, looking at me sadly but still smiling. I couldn't take it anymore and asked my family what on earth they were smiling about because, as far as I could see, there was nothing to be happy about. I was upset because Kelly had just broken up my engagement and taken away my boyfriend of almost 3 years. There was nothing funny or sweet about it. My mother spoke up and told me that they couldn't change the past, but they could accept the future. They believed that the future had Kelly and Jack together, and even though the relationship started with cheating, they felt sorry about it, but wanted me to understand that this was for the best. Kelly apologized for taking my boyfriend, saying she couldn't help falling in love with him. She wished she had told me earlier so I didn't have to find out this way, but she said they were deeply in love and wanted to spend their lives together. Then they kissed right in front of me, and my mother even wiped a tear from her eyes. I snapped and told them that this wasn't something to be sentimental about. What they were doing was disgusting. To my surprise, my family got annoyed with me and said I was being bratty. Instead of being happy for my sister, they thought I was making it all about myself and didn't approve of my behavior. I was shocked by their attitude and told them all to get out of my house. I couldn't understand how they were defending Kelly and Jack while making me look like the bad guy, acting like I was overreacting. My father stepped in and told me not to act like a child because things like this happen, and I should just accept it. He said I should be happy that my sister found her soulmate instead of being jealous. It felt like they were all acting crazy, and I couldn't deal with it anymore. So I said screw it, went to my room, packed some of my things, and left again without talking to them or listening to what they had to say. Even as they called my name and told me not to go, I didn't have anything left to say to them because it was clear that they cared more about Kelly and her happiness than about me or what was right and wrong. They were so focused on justifying what Kelly had done that they completely forgot that I had real feelings too. After that day, my family tried to contact me several times, but I never responded because I didn't think I owed them anything. A couple of weeks later, I even received an invitation to Kelly and Jack's wedding, which I obviously declined. All the friends that Jack and I had in common also declined the wedding invitation to support me, and even a few relatives who knew the truth stopped interacting with my family after they learned how I had been treated. It's been 3 years, and I've cut them out of my life completely. They occasionally try to get back in touch by wishing me well on my birthday or New Year, but I always ignore them. I never blocked any of them, though I did remove them from my friends list. Since I have a public account, they could still see what I was up to, which is what I wanted. I wanted them to see that I was living a great life and let them feel jealous. It was a bit petty, but it was the least I could do after how they treated me. Until recently, I had no idea what they had been up to in the last few years. About 5 days ago, my mother called me from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered and realized it was her, I tried to hang up, but she begged me desperately for a chance to talk. She sounded so upset that I agreed to listen for a couple of minutes because I couldn't ignore her completely. She told me that Kelly and Jack had started a business a couple of years ago, but it was failing badly. Their investors were backing out because the business wasn't making any profit. They borrowed more money, but even that didn't help, and now they were deep in debt. Loan sharks were after them, and they were being hounded by everyone from their employees to their investors and the people they had borrowed money from. I live a comfortable life and could afford to help them out, so my mother turned to me as a last resort, begging me to loan the money to pay off their debts. She wasn't asking for a small amount either. She wanted almost $95,000 to help Kelly and Jack. I asked why Kelly wasn't the one calling me if she needed help, and why she was making our mother speak to me instead. My mother explained that Kelly and Jack didn't even know she was asking me for help because they had told her not to. I guess they all still remembered what happened 3 years ago. Kelly didn't want me to know about their situation and wasn't ready to take help from me, but my mother didn't know anyone else who could give them that much money quickly. A couple of months had already passed, and Kelly and Jack were struggling even to put food on the table. My parents and Jack's family were helping as much as they could, but it wasn't enough. They had their own futures to think about, especially since most of my family, including Jack's parents, were retired. That's why my mother, with no other options, had called me to ask for help. I could afford to help them, but I really didn't want to. Kelly was right not to contact me for help because they lost the right to ask anything of me the day they cheated on me. I told my mother that I couldn't help them, and even if I could, I wouldn't. She sounded very upset and told me I was being cruel and needed to think about my family. I reminded her that Kelly and Jack didn't think about me when they had their affair, and my family didn't think about me while they supported them. So I didn't see why I needed to think about them now. I had worked hard to get where I am today, and I wasn't going to just give away $95,000 to 2 people who didn't deserve it. My mother started crying on the phone, saying she never expected me to grow up to be so selfish, and claimed that my sister and her husband would end up in big trouble if I didn't help them out. I told my mother that it was unfortunate, but I couldn't help them, and then I hung up. Since then, she's been sending me text after text, almost every hour, begging me to reconsider and think about my sister. She keeps saying that this isn't the time for petty revenge, and that Kelly is in serious trouble. She warns that if I don't help her now, I'll regret it in the future. My mother is acting desperate, and I don't know what to say to her because I don't want to feel like the bad person here either. Am I wrong for not helping my sister financially after she stole my fiancé 3 years ago? Update. I finally blocked my family. I hadn't done that earlier because first I wanted them to see what I was up to and feel jealous, and second, because I thought cutting them off completely might be something I'd regret if something bad happened to them. But no, I don't care anymore. I should have removed them from my life 3 years ago. Keeping them around this long was the real petty thing I did. Refusing to help my sister now isn't petty. It's just the logical thing to do. They've already wasted so much money, and I'm sure that even if I gave them the money now, they wouldn't be able to pay it back. $95,000 is a huge amount, and even though I'm doing well financially, that doesn't mean I can just give away that kind of money without expecting it back. If it were a close friend I was helping, I would still expect to be repaid. But these are people who are close to me, and they're definitely not my loved ones. I can't expect them to pay me back, so there's really no reason for me to help them out. It's as simple as that. I talked to a few of my friends about this to get their opinions, and they agreed that I did the right thing by refusing to give them the money, not out of revenge, but because it's completely impractical and foolish to expect me to help the very people who betrayed me in the past. Anyway, my mother is now blocked, and she can't contact me to guilt-trip me anymore. I have nothing to worry about, or at least that's what I thought. Update 2. Hi everyone. Something really big happened today. I was at work when I got a call from my neighbor. She told me there was a couple outside my house screaming for me to come out and talk to them. My neighbor said they seemed pretty crazy and had been yelling at my door for about an hour, refusing to leave. I asked her to describe them, but deep down, I already knew who it was. When she described them, it just confirmed my suspicion. It was Kelly and Jack. My neighbor insisted that I'd come back home to deal with them because she didn't think they were up to any good. Given that it was Kelly and Jack, I knew she was right. So I thanked her and immediately started driving back home because I couldn't risk them getting into my house. Luckily, I got there in about 20 minutes and caught them in the act of trying to break into my house by picking a lock on my door. I pulled up in front of my house and demanded to know what they thought they were doing. I tried to call the police right away, but Jack moved like lightning and knocked the phone out of my hand. Kelly walked over and said they were just there to talk and didn't want anything from me, at least not right now. I told them to make it quick and made it clear that they shouldn't expect me to invite them inside. Whatever they had to say would have to be discussed outside in the yard. They seemed okay with that, which was a relief, because I didn't think it would be a good idea to let them inside. They already seemed pretty hostile, and I didn't know what to expect. Kelly started talking and told me that our mother had informed her about the phone call and how I had ignored the texts that followed and even blocked them all. She said that the way I was behaving was very unfair, and that since it had been 3 years, I should really be over it by now. I was accused of being silly and dramatic just to get attention from my family. Kelly said she felt insulted because I refused to help them, and that's why she was there to talk to me. She mentioned that she had managed to arrange the money for now by selling their house and all their jewelry, but there was a strong chance she might need more in the future. She wanted to know that she could rely on me for help when that time came. I told her flat out that she couldn't and shouldn't count on me at all under any circumstances, because I hated her and her husband with a passion. I was so angry that I warned her it was taking all my self-control not to hit her at that moment, so it would be best if they just left. Jack shockingly demanded that they wouldn't go anywhere until I signed a document promising to give them money in the future whenever they needed it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I knew that such a document wouldn't be legally valid if I was forced to sign it under pressure, and they had to be out of their minds if they thought they could manipulate me into something like that. I told both of them to get out, but Kelly pushed me and said that I had to help them because I owed it to them since we were family. She said I couldn't just run away from my responsibilities like this. I was stunned that she actually pushed me, and I was tempted to slap her. But I held back because I knew that getting violent would only make things worse. Instead, I decided to grab my phone, which had fallen to the ground when Jack knocked it out of my hand earlier, and I made a run for it. I quickly climbed into my car and drove off without even checking my rearview mirror. Luckily, I hadn't turned off the engine when I had left the car, so it was still running, and I was able to get a head start on them. They didn't chase after me on foot, which was a relief, but they stayed at my house, which was unfortunate. Once I was at a safe distance, I decided to call the police and report what was happening. I drove back to my house just in time, arriving shortly before the police got there. Within about 25 minutes, they showed up, and I filled them in on everything that had happened. The police arrested Kelly and Jack and took them away. I knew the charges weren't that serious, and they'd probably get off easily, but it was still worth it because at least they were taken away, and I didn't have to deal with them anymore. A few hours have passed since then, and I haven't heard from anyone in my family, which is strange. I thought by now at least one of them would have tried to contact me from a different number, but they haven't. I'm guessing they're either over everything and won't try to get under my skin again, or they're just waiting for the right time to contact me later when things have calmed down a bit. Update 3. Hi. So my last update was about a week ago, and I had started to believe that my family was finally going to leave me alone after I called the cops on Kelly and Jack. But I was wrong. Even that didn't stop them from bothering me again. This time, it was my parents who showed up at my house asking if they could talk to me for a moment. This happened yesterday, and they seemed much less arrogant compared to Kelly and Jack, so I decided to let them in. As soon as my mother entered the house, she started crying and apologized for ever taking Kelly's side over mine. My father explained that after they learned Kelly and Jack were arrested because of their behavior, including physically pushing me, they couldn't see them the same way anymore. They had decided to cut them off. My mother kept crying the entire time she was there, while my father continued apologizing for siding with Kelly in the past when it was actually me who was the victim. I told my parents that while I appreciated them finally coming to their senses, it was too little too late to make things better. I had grown used to living my life on my own terms and didn't want to go back to putting my family before myself. As much as I appreciated their visit and apology, I couldn't promise to work on a relationship because, honestly, I didn't see any point in trying to salvage something that was already broken, even if it was with my parents. They protested a bit, saying that we could fix things if we really wanted to, but that was the problem. I didn't want to anymore. I just wanted to be by myself, free from the complications, and hurt of the past. I told them I respected their efforts, but I was done trying. They seemed a little disappointed, but eventually they left and asked if I could at least unblock them so they could keep in touch. I did unblock my parents, which feels a bit strange, but for now, that's where things stand. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I'm focusing on my own peace and well-being. Stay tuned for more updates on how things unfold.